So first off, thank you. Hope Tia Webfest has been an amazing experience so far. I'm sure it has been. So today we are chatting all about web series from Down Under. We have our incredible panelists here. And first up, I would just love to introduce Michelle Melke, a creative director at Amplify, a co-producer and co-director of Love Songs, aka the world's first narrative series on TikTok. So please put your hands together for Michelle.
Thank you. Hello.
Woohoo! And up next, we have Loani Arman, commissioning editor for Scripted at SBS Australia. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Woohoo! And for those who don't know me, I'm Mariah Owen. I'm an actor, writer, producer, director, and I have my Webby honorary production company, GTE Productions. So to start off, I'd love to ask you both, what is something you wish you learned earlier in your creative process or your career? Luana, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I think for me, like as a creative, because I have my own creative practice as well as working in executive roles in television, and I think this does carry over into that work. I think I wish I had, and I understand why I didn't feel this, but I wish I had that clarity of voice in my work that took me many, many years to come into. And I think a lot of that was because I didn't have examples of what my voice could look like on screen. So I was working with sort of layers of, oppression and barriers that didn't maybe exist for other people who seemed to sort of naturally step into their voice. So I always knew that I had great creative instincts. I always knew I had potential as a creative, but I didn't know how to put my hand up to even say I wanted an opportunity, and let alone understand how that sort of agency over my voice could translate into my work. So I've certainly landed in that place in my own creative practice, but it's definitely something when I'm working with, particularly in the emerging sector, with teams who come from those marginalised or excluded communities, as I do at SBS, that I'm really, a lot of the work is about how do we create a situation or cultural safety or an environment that is conducive to them being able to land in their voice. And that is different, I will say, for every kind of every group that I work with, and then within that looking at what different cultures, what the intersections are within that group, and listening to that as part of the process to help them deliver on their voice. So that's always, I wish I knew that. I wish I knew how to do that earlier in my career, because I would have saved myself a couple of decades, I would say.
I hear you on that, and I think it's so amazing for you to be both a creative and an executive, because that just adds a whole other level when you're communicating with people. That's special. How about you, Michelle?
Mine's probably something I'm actually still learning now, which is patience. I am a really, really impatient person. I'm really hyper-competitive, and the film industry does not move fast. It's such a slow-moving thing, and I think it's why I actually got into web series in the first place, because you can just make something. You don't have to wait for anything. And in my early career, I used to be like, well, why don't I have a movie now? Why haven't I made money now? And even though I've gotten through some of those things, still today, I'm like, why isn't it happening now? Like, I still need to learn to be patient and play the game. But I've gotten slightly better at it since I started.
That's such a good note, because sometimes that impatience can lead to an addiction to the hustle. So you're kind of hustling for the opportunity without looking at the opportunity that's right at hand, or giving, your sort of due care to the project that could actually create those opportunities. So I've certainly felt that in my career of realising, I think I'm just hustling and not getting anywhere. But it can be quite addictive, because it can feel like the work, and it's actually not.
It's duty care to yourself, your physical body. You're working so hard, especially when you're a producer on an indie project with no money. You're the person who's wrapping sandwiches and picking up props, and because you can't afford a caterer or an art director. So you work yourself that hard because you're impatient, because you want it now, then you physically get run down, which again, I'm sure we both still do.
Yes.
For sure, but those are skills that translate as you continue on in your career. You get bigger budgets. Those skills that you learn when you're first starting out, those are some of the most important ones, because then you're able to kind of help your team in different places. Michelle, I know that this is a question everyone wants to know. It's all about money within the web series. And how did you pitch brands? And how was it, because with branded content, and so was it different than a normal pitch for you? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that was a really early stage career moment for myself. So I'd made a web series that was 25 minutes long on YouTube that obviously nobody ever saw. So it was 25 minutes long on YouTube. And then I did the complete opposite, and we did 1-minute episodes on TikTok. It's the complete literal opposite of my first show. And I will say, before we even took it to brands, we'd had one very successful season organic reach. So we had 12 million views and 90,000 followers. Casual. Not bad, with $0 in marketing spend. So we had a really strong intellectual property to take to a brand. So that did a lot of the heavy lifting. I'd say the approach when working with brands is really just you need to speak brand marketing language. They don't care about the story as much as you do. They care about how they fit into that story. So the brand that we approached for my show, Love Songs, it's a rom-com. We approached Tinder, which is a dating app I'm sure you have all heard of. So obviously, rom-com, dating app, Tinder, those pieces all made sense. And then what they wanted to know was, okay, but how are we specifically in it episode to episode? So it really was just speaking marketing jargon, focusing less on the heart and soul and creative of the project, and more about why should we give you money for Tinder to be a part of this story, and how's it gonna benefit Tinder?
Absolutely. I think that's important too, the difference, because with film, when we pitch as creatives, we want to, put our blood, sweat, and tears and our souls into these. So learning the difference of how to pitch someone that's a little bit more corporate.
They could care less who the director or the writer is. They didn't actually ask at any stage. They didn't even read the scripts. They looked at the script and said, this is 100 pages, I'm not reading this. So we just highlighted where Tinder was mentioned, for example.
Right. Very interesting. And similar with you, Luanny, how we want to chat about financing these short form dramas at SBS. How does it work? What budget ranges are you working with? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, so our budgets for our 6x10 series are about 1.2, just shy of 1.2 million. And that is a finance plan that's already pretty much on the table. So we have Screen Australia, which is our federal funding agency, coming in with a big chunk of that finance plan. We have the licence fee from SBS. We have state agency finance in that, which we have to apply for. So that's always kind of the missing piece of the puzzle. And then because we also we first broadcast that 6x10 as a 1-hour piece of television, what that makes us eligible for is a tax rebate. So that forms part of a big part of the finance plan as producer equity. So it's kind of pretty much that. Those budgets in this kind of economy are pretty tight now. So I'm looking over the budgets for the next crop of our short form dramas, which we call our digital originals. And this has been such a great experience being here and just sort of considering, are there opportunities for co-productions? Are there other ways to bring in money into those finance plans? A little bit harder, I think, in the scripted space, particularly working with SBS's partly government funded, mostly government funded. So working with brands is a little more complex in that space, but maybe that's an avenue that we can look at. And we just have to start stretching our thinking around how do we finance these shows, because that finance plan, as set as it is, and as reasonable as it is for a 6x10 series, is just not enough money in this current climate. So big question that I'll problem solve when I get back to Australia.
Perfect. I mean, creating more content is a good problem to have, for sure. And we kind of touched on a question that I was going to ask a little bit later, but in terms of co-productions, has SBS dipped their toe in the waters for that? Are you, thinking about that at a global scale and what that tax incentive might look like?
We are, but we haven't done it yet. So certainly not in the short form space, but on our longer form slate, we are considering it, and pretty much for the same reasons. We just need more money. So not yet, but we're considering it
soon.
So come and talk to me.
Amazing. Michelle, how do you feel about cross promotion with your content creation? What does that process look like for you while promoting a series that is on TikTok? Are you doing that expansion and that cross promoting onto Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms?
No.
Sweet. Awesome.
It's one simple reason. It's so much work. Yeah. It's so much work. And for what? You can't get the views on Instagram. You can't get the views on... Unless you pay to play, you have $1 marketing budget. Right. You're not going to get those views on Facebook, Instagram, or the other one, YouTube. So I've done it. Like I have had Instagram accounts for love songs, and we did one for my second show, Scattered, which was a higher production budget. It was interesting. The only way it becomes interesting for a show like Love Songs is it really showed how dedicated and invested those fans were in the show. Like I do feel like we built a fandom around Love Songs. So we did convert, it doesn't sound like much, but from like 100,000 followers, we got like 1,500 Instagram followers, which from a TikTok to Instagram conversion rate of about 1% to 10%. Like it's not bad. So the average conversion rate from a TikTok to IG I want to see from a corporate perspective is like 3 to 5%. So sitting at that 1 to 2% in an experimental scripted genre, it's not bad. But my one piece of advice when people ask me about that is like, unless you're going to do it 100%, it is a total waste of your time. Invest that time in your key platform that you're growing your audience on. It's just a waste of time.
And what are the ways that you're growing your audience on TikTok, being your primary platform and where you're spending your most time in creating your content?
Yeah, just post all the time. I mean, that's the simplest way. Is TikTok is a volume platform. They've really shifted the, YouTubers typically were a once a week channel. You post one vlog or whatever a week. TikTok at its origin was like a 3 post per day platform. That was the recommendation from TikTok to post 3 times a day. That's obviously very different to once a week. So I'd say posting super frequently, experimenting with your style of posting, length time, 15 seconds versus 60 seconds, using the tools that TikTok have for virality, so sounds, trends, memes. CapCut is now a part of the conversation that didn't exist 2 years ago, using CapCut templates to speed up your edit process and leading into CapCut trends. So TikTok has all these tools and things that can help you grow that audience. So don't just assume like your awesome professional 60-second trailer is going to do the job. You need to cut it up shorter and put it with a sound and use a CapCut template, and those all lead to gaining followers and views.
And it's nice that I feel like TikTok kind of has laid out this process in a more accessible way than YouTube, because YouTube sometimes feels like, oh, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to, but I don't really feel like I'm getting that traction or getting that movement. So it's nice to hear that there's kind of a clear pathway if you're wanting to create on TikTok. Luani, what's the biggest hurdle you're seeing with short form projects right now? And what do you think is working really well? And, how does that differ from maybe an experience here in Canada? What is something that Australia brings that makes the process really strong?
I think Australia is a country that's sort of searching for its identity. I mean, to just state it, we don't have treaty with our First Nations people, so and it's a big immigrant community. So I think that plays really well into the short form space because it is a format that can lean really well into very specific voices and very specific communities. And there are less eyes that tend to be on that project, so you have the opportunity to bring in new voices and really let them explore how to tell their stories their way. I think about that a lot in the work that I do. So I think that's one of the kind of benefits of short form, particularly for a country like us in Australia that is searching for cultural identity. And I feel really proud of the kind of work that we can do at SBS in our short form slate to make those offerings, to give different perspectives to our audiences that do feel like they shift away from I know I was going to give an example, but I'm not going to take anyone down in this industry. Positivity. That shift away from what maybe feels naturally a bit broader. But I make the case, as I did on the last panel, that specificity of voice is what is global. And actually, cue it up. I would love to show you a trailer for Latecomers because I talk about it a lot, but you all probably haven't seen it. It is available on CBC Gem. There's my plug. But I would love to show you a trailer of it because it gives a really great example of how specific that voice is and probably a really good taste of why it had that local appeal but also found some global success. So it's the Latecomers one. I don't know. I sent you two. Yes, great. I'll just move out of the way.
Hold still. Sure, let me just hit pause on my cerebral palsy, why don't I? That'd be great.
Oh my God, he's cute.
Too old for you and too hot for me.
Yeah? Well, you starting around your girlfriend. Hey.
I'm only here because my carer's trying to have sex with your carer.
Trying?
Sure, I'm down.
Frank is going to ask Sarah on a date.
Good on him.
Keep an eye on Sarah for me, would you? I don't want to have sex with you. Oh, wow.
I'm sorry about Frank. For what it's worth, sex is overrated.
Mate, you abandoned me for sex.
I'm sorry.
Was it worth it? Absolutely.
You knew he liked her, bro. Liked her. They're not even talking to each other.
I think the real reason you called me unfuckable is because that's how you feel about yourself.
I'm not unfuckable. I'm not unfuckable.
Hey, no running at the pool.
Easy for you to say.
Oh no!
Sarah.
The Hoyer lift is
It's good. Solid. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
That looks amazing.
So it's just, like just even watching it back and being reminded that we subtitled that because one of the key cast is also one of the creators of the show and required that subtitling for audiences, but as a measure of parody and being trying to be inclusive in that subtitling. We subtitled all of it, and audiences really lapped that up and sort of immediately understood why we did that, and that sort of became part of the appeal of the show as well. But also just watching it back, reminding myself of how SBS has been working in these spaces of these representations for a long time. But if we're going to be progressive in that space, we're looking at what is the kind of range of diversity within that space, but also not sanitizing communities, not their disabilities are not the only reason that they're on screen, and they're not perfect people. They are flawed characters. And so that was really appealing to an audience as well. Less eyes on my content, but look what can be made. So we're super proud of that at SBS. Can't remember the question that you asked, but there's a whole bunch
can't
of
remember
things.
either.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so. When can I see that? I want to watch it now.
You can, CBC Gem.
Oh, right. CBC Gem. Everyone watch it tonight, right now. I think, what I was saying, what's the biggest hurdle you're seeing with short form projects? What do you think is working well? Oh, no, did I? Yeah, I did. How does it differ from Canadian stories in that way and what Australia has to offer?
I don't know Canadian stories, from my sampling of it over the last couple of days, there's some really exciting content. I've got in my notebook a whole list of series that I want to be watching. So I don't know that it varies that differently. I think what Australia, maybe it's just SBS, but what I'm really proud of is the way that we walk into equity and inclusion spaces and how committed we are to that as the very thing that we're commissioning. We are commissioning for that purpose, to that charter, for that reason, and backing that there is success that these creatives can find by being that. Oh God, I did it again. I'm going to get it. Some words I just can't say.
I'm not trying to say
You got it. You can do it.
Specific is what I was reaching.
We're just two silly little Aussie girls. We can't talk.
There's just some words I can't say, and that word comes up a lot in the work that I do. But being very specific in that voice and backing that. I don't know that there's that many differences, because there seems to be a whole bunch of really interesting series and creators working in Canada, and I'm definitely interested in carrying that conversation moving forward.
Fantastic. And I feel like the web space gives people such a great opportunity to really kind of take bigger swings with the content and the stuff that they're making, And so how do you feel about that? Do you feel, based on being, more creator driven, that you're able to take bigger swings? And since a lot of it, especially for you, Michelle, you're figuring out your own financing, you're pitching, you're going in there boots on the ground. Do you feel like web really gives you an advantage versus waiting by the phone or waiting, after pitches in TV and film space?
Well, yeah, like it exists. Like it wouldn't have existed if we hadn't gone out and done that. So I'd rather have something, like a piece of something, than all of nothing when it comes to the work I like. Particularly like the work that I have made is very like YA, teen girl drama, and it's like Australia doesn't really do much of that anyway. Like I'm working on a feature film now that's like a young adult novel adaptation, right? The last time Australia made a feature film for teenage girls was Looking for Alabrandy, which is the year 2000. It's a fantastic film. It's 23 years ago. And I watch those movies all day, every day in my personal life. So to be able to make content for teenage girls that's really like fun and playful and unserious, it's like, well, there was no one really doing that. So I was like, well, I want to do that. So yeah, like it's a different kind of audience we're serving to SBS for sure, but I still think like a really valuable audience in teen girls who are really passionate. They're passionate fans. They fight for what they love. I know because I do it for the things that I love as a fangirl. So it's a very underserved audience in Australia that loves content and is on the internet. It's like, why aren't we doing that in Australia? So that's why we started to do it.
It's a good point because, you know, when we talk about niche audiences, like what we're saying is it's an underserved audience. They exist. They're out there.
It's not
just that
niche
our screen
at all.
culture hasn't served them in any way. So they're not niche. And I get why we reached for that word because it's about targeting an audience. But then it's not niche. Those audiences exist. And whether I have a disability or not, latecomers appeals to me. So I'm that audience. So I think, you know, it's a really, really good point. We're working towards underserved audiences.
I think, like, just building on what you've said, Loani, is like underserved is very different from niche. And I've heard other people on the other panels talking about like TikTok niches or TikTok communities. It's like, yeah, those communities, like, you know, try to think of one at the moment off the top of my head, but my current thing I'm working on at the moment is related to Formula One. 2 weeks ago I didn't know anything about, and now I know everything about. And Formula One you could describe as like a niche topic, but it's not. It just was clearly a couple of years ago underserved. And then when Netflix did Drive to Survive, they discovered actually, oh, women love Formula One. Here's a whole new audience for this niche genre. It's not niche. Like millions of people love Formula One. So yeah, I just think like in Australia, like teenage girls is definitely a niche not niche. It's a very underserved audience for people who love to consume content on the internet. So yeah.
I find that fascinating. Why do you think that? Do you think that Australia was previously trying to follow trends of other countries, or what? Why did that happen?
Like the gatekeepers of Australian film industry.
Not
it's
me.
Like not people like us 20 years ago. So I would say that would be why. And I would say there's like a lot of like the same thing.
I mean,
over
it's a
and
small
over.
industry.
It's a small industry.
So we have a limited amount of content we can actually make. My slate is incredibly small at SBS. So that's, you know, like that's challenging. I can imagine if you didn't have someone like me in the role, what that might convert to is reaching for a broader audience and looking for, you know, if you're making 2 shows a year, or 2 to 3 shows a year, then how much audience can you reach within that? But again, we're working at a level where we're respecting that audiences do exist. Those underserved audiences do exist, and we'll find them by being very specific. I did it! Very specific in your storytelling, in your voice, serving those audiences, and that can lead to that broad audience appeal or that global appeal.
Building on that, that's like actually just such a great point, because I feel like Australians for a very long time were making movies that they thought Americans would like, or Canadians, or, you know, whatever Western markets we were trying to play in. It's like we're trying to make movies that are super Aussie so that foreigners want to watch them from like a box office dollars number. Like, and I think there's a really interesting like recent update around this. It's like the biggest Australian feature film in the US up until recently had been Crocodile Dundee. And now, I don't know if it's officially overtaken, but now it's Talk to Me, which is the new horror movie from the Raka Raka guys, YouTubers or twins. And I mean, that's a whole incredible other story that I'm really close on. But that's a genre film, it's a horror film. It feels Australian, but it's not crocodiles in the outback. It's like a suburban horror film. It's about family, it's about identity and belonging and motherhood. And it's a great movie. If you haven't seen Talk to Me, go see it. It's amazing. But that's like, I think that shows a real shift. Crocodile Dundee to Talk to Me, big shift over the last 20 years or 40 years. I don't know when Crocodile Dundee came out. long time ago.
I mean, that's really exciting, getting to see the future and being two, path makers for that. I hope you're incredibly, I don't want to be like, hope you're proud of yourself, but it's true, especially as creatives in this field. And it's not easy being trailblazers. So kudos to you. What's one thing for both of you that has proven to be extremely challenging that you thought would be easy, whether in both the creative process or in terms of pitching and production? And what is something that surprised you to be easy that you thought would be really difficult?
I've got mine because
Woohoo.
it happens. It's like my daily life and my role. The thing I thought would be easy that's hard is convincing commissioners, not you, Lawani, I've never pitched you, but convincing other commissioners that they should use, I'm going to use the word influencers in content. We call them creators in my industry, but I know creators means something different in this room. So using TikTokers or Instagrammers as key people in the content to
In
help
terms of
drive
actors,
writers, whatever, scripted and unscripted, I'm pitching. It's like I've got people who have built-in audience drivers who can move 500,000 people to your new platform. Stan, it's an Australian platform, whatever it is. And people just, I don't get it. And I'm like, what don't you get? I'm telling you, they've got built-in audiences. That's what you need to drive sales. So that's been a really big frustration for me because my company is a creator economy company and that's what we do. The thing that I thought would be hard that's easy is getting brands to give me money. It's so easy. They're just so willing to do it. Yeah, I mean, every brand wants to play on TikTok. They know they have to do it. They want to be experimental and they want more meaningful. They know the Gen Zs can really recognize an ad. They go, that's an ad, I don't care. So when it's something more integrated, like a scripted piece, or I've done a lot of unscripted brand-funded things, like music reality shows or gaming reality shows or whatever, they get to play in a more meaningful way and bring value to their consumers. So they're quite open to the idea of giving you money for that.
And what does that kind of pitch look like? I know I asked you previously, but when we're looking at something like that, I know kind of proving the hole in the market that they have that you'll bring in and fill. But how does that work for you exactly? Because it's easy, obviously you have a track record and you have a fan base, but for those first few deals, I know you talked about Tinder, which is phenomenal, but for the average creator who's just starting, getting those brand deals is hard because you don't have that. So what is something that you did?
Yeah, I mean, I got a job at my company, Amplify, where I work. I was giving advice to someone yesterday, I don't remember who, around Maggie. I was talking to you, Jess, but I was also talking to Maggie about how to get brand funding for her show. And my first piece of advice was to actually Google, if you want to work with, I'll use Maggie's example, Uber Eats. So Google Uber Eats Canada campaign, find the latest ad campaign from Uber Eats. There'll be some marketing article about it, and look in the credits as to the ad agency or production company that made that ad and talk to them. It's very hard to reach a brand manager at Uber Eats. They are busy and they don't care, but they already work with their ad agencies or creative agencies. And my company where I now work is a production company / agency / blah, blah, blah. They had the relationships with the brands that opened the door for me to then pitch my creative work. So going to the brands directly is complicated and scary. Talking to an ad agency and coming up to them and saying, hey, I have a property, it exists, I've already gotten some funding for it, can you help connect me with a brand? And they will take a slice of the pie for that connection. So that is definitely an avenue. When it comes to the actual pitch itself, I'll just give a quick example as to doing it for a client where we started from zero. So there was no love songs, there was no existing thing. One of our big clients at Amplify is Samsung. So Samsung came to us with the challenge of wanting to be cool to Gen Zs. That was the brief. And they, very inventive. And their passion area they wanted to tap into was music. So we want to do something in music, and we want to do something on TikTok, and we want to do Gen Z, we want to be cool. So then me and the team and Amplify came back with a show called Undiscovered. It's the X Factor on TikTok. The pitch was, music and TikTok, huge synergy. Content creators are trying to blow up and go viral as musicians on TikTok. Let's give them a TV show structure to do that. And Samsung is going to make someone's dream come true, and they're going to get to record their album, and it'll be totally independent because that's what Gen Z care about. Tapped into all of our knowledge of, music, Gen Z, research, blah, 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 and put together a show format as a part of a brief response to Samsung. And we've done 2 seasons of Undiscovered to huge success, where we're pitching season 3 right now. So that's, a format that lives entirely on TikTok, is entirely social, but has sort of like the scale of like a full-scale reality TV show almost. Like it's a very large budget compared to some of the other shows I've done. So yeah, it's really like understanding the brand and the ask and being realistic about, I guess, compromising for the brand's needs.
And putting a team together, kind of seeing what players would work best and kind of putting it together that way. That's so cool. I'm so excited for both of you. What are some trends that you're seeing in the current landscape? I know everyone always talks about trends and what we're seeing and how to, get ahead of them. But what's something that you're really excited about? And, is there anywhere new or a new genre that you're excited about seeing or you think might pop up?
I think in the short form space, what I'm specifically interested in, if I think about my current slate, we've got a horror anthology about from the Korean diaspora, looking at the migrant experience. It's super interesting. So 5 episodes, 5 by 12 minutes. But what was really interesting about that project was that they came in with accompanying marketing strategy that they're going to be partnering with Webtoon. So they'll release a webtoon that will go out day and date with this drop. So I think that's super interesting to me, and looking at ways in which we can reach audiences, and probably will require some conversations with Michelle when we get back to Australia about how we can start to do that across our slate more broadly. Because, I do find, if I'm going to be frank about it, in the short form space, we all know that when budgets are tight, marketing is something that is hard to grab dollars for. And because that short form slate doesn't feel like it has a need as much as our prime time or our long form, then very often I'm looking at how do we reach audience on nothing. So when a creator comes in with a strategy like that and they're forward thinking about audience, that excites me. So I'm interested in exploring that a little more closely. And again, I'm sure we'll have many conversations about that, moving forward.
Yeah, I'd say like one trend that I really am excited about is podcasting, actually. So it's been a part of the conversation. It's just funny as well to see more and more web series festival have like a little podcast category. It's like, it's nothing to do with screen, but we all kind of know like, you're one of us. And at Amplify, we produce a lot of pods. So I've done like 10 or something-ish pods that are conversational talky shows. But recently we've started to do more scripted podcasts. So we released a scripted audio drama early this year for Surprise Teenage Girls. And that was really fun. And it was one of those things, like it was my original concept, and then one of my staff members wrote the script. It was her first ever screenplay. She's a great budding writer. And I was so excited to be like, you get to write a script at work. Like, how awesome is that? You're getting paid to write. It was brand funded as well. They covered the budget. And now we have another audio drama in development with Audible. That's a little more formal and commission-y style. So it's just so quick and cheap and easy to make a podcast compared to a web project. And I do think the future of adaptations will be looking to podcasting instead of books. Calling it now. And I do think more production companies won't need to license books and other IPs because they can own a podcast from inception, like my production company has done. So you don't need to... You're always investing in property you already own instead of having to go out there and find other people to give money to, which as a producer obviously is better. So yeah, podcasting.
Fantastic. I'd love to open it up. Does anyone have any questions? You, sir, in the front.
Hey, thank you so much for the engaging discussion so far. I think this question is mainly for Michelle, though might work for you as well. So I understand you've worn a lot of hats throughout your career, from being the art director, like you said, and it's quite a big step for people to sort of take a step back and allow people outside, to come in, right? And it's your baby, right? You want to make sure that those people are doing the best that they can. So I guess what are some green flags in terms of like getting those people on board, whether it's like an art director or a post sound guy or something, and maybe some red flags? And then I imagine maybe it's internal for your corporation, but maybe what do you look for in terms of like looking into those individuals or companies that can help out with the productions?
It's a great question. I have trust issues. I find it so hard to let go of the work. And our team, Amplify, is a very fast-growing business. This time last year, I had 1 team member, and now I have 6 people in my team, like full-time staff. And I've been away this week, and I've been calling them and taking calls. But is everyone okay? But that's actually a me problem. You have to learn to let go at some stage, otherwise you can never level up as a producer. You can't run coffees all day, like you've got to let go. But I would say like green flags for me personally, it's what do you care about? Like passion, like I am a fandom person, Amplify is a fandom creator economy company. So I just like to have conversations with people where they go, oh no, I actually used to write fan fiction about Doctor Who. I'm like, you're in. Like it's a culture thing. And obviously hustle. It's a hard business. I need you to work hard. I also work hard. So like willingness to like be a team player essentially. And are they interested in the same things that we as a company are interested in? Like if you're like a stats and numbers person, like you're not going to do well as a producer at Amplify. Like it's a very passion driven role. Red flags, I don't know. You kind of just know when you suss someone out, like red flags. I mean, and I've also made mistakes. I've hired the wrong people sometimes. I'm still like a young person. I'm still making mistakes in terms of like building teams. So I'm also still learning how to like hire people. Loani probably has way better examples of like green and red flags and people and you, in your experience.
They're actually not that dissimilar, but I do think about it a lot because it's all well and good to have a great project and it might be right for SBS, but you also got to be the right team for us to work with, because when you're in the trenches and you're not that right team, that's when all the red flags are kind of like pinging everywhere, right? Yeah. So I do think a lot about that, and I think about the culture that we're creating through development on set, and if it's not the right team driving that, then they're probably not for us, and we will make decisions based around team. So it's not enough for us to have a great project at all. It's just not. And we're also, I think, you know, as a scripted team, we're really in the business of kind of humanising what it means to make content and understanding that story is all about human connection. But in order to tell good stories about human connection, we have to connect well as human beings. So sometimes, like, to be honest, the green flag is kind of hard to pin down. It's just whether you get along with that particular team and you're sort of synergized in your creative vision, but you also know that they're collaborators. Making television is a team sport, and so we think about that a lot. Like, do we trust them to do their job, but also do they trust us? Because if we're in a process of creative like development on a project and the team just are not responsive to notes, and that doesn't mean that we expect everybody to take every note that we give, but notes are like, you know, when I'm giving notes, sometimes it's like I'm giving everything to it, all of my heart and all of my experience and all of my story, you know, potential as an offering, as a gesture. So when that bit is not seen or respected, I take that as a bump as a human being. So I'm kind of into I'm very into sort of that conversation. Is this the team? Like when I think about, is it the team to deliver? Is it the team to deliver with us? Absolutely do we think about that. And we will let projects go if that piece of the puzzle just ain't there.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing advice. Any at the back here?
So I guess my question is also for Michelle. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on YouTube Shorts as opposed to TikTok?
Yeah, it's like it's the obvious question to ask. I don't think there is culture around YouTube Shorts yet, so I think it has to be more than just having the product feature. There needs to be people using it to create culture. Like, so TikTok is a place where culture is currently happening. Twitter, whatever, X, whatever, is still a place where culture is happening. And I guess culture to me is people actively using those spaces to create new memes and trends and conversations, and share and news updates and all that kind of thing. And I don't think YouTube Shorts is there. Like, people are not going to Shorts to like learn the latest about Taylor Swift's new whatever. So that's not where my audience is playing. However, it does make sense to use as, if you're making vertical short form content, and that's worth noting is that all my shows, most of them are shot for vertical. So I'm not just like reframing. But if you are shooting for vertical and you're shooting in 1 minute, just put it on YouTube Shorts. It's like one button press. There's no extra work in that case. It's not like fostering an Instagram like we were talking about before. It is just like pressing a button and throwing it up there. The reason I say it is worth just dumping is that because Shorts is a new function on YouTube Shorts, YouTube's algorithm is actively pushing Shorts out to people. A YouTube creator that we used to work with at Amplify was the fastest growing YouTuber in Australia. He went from 0 to 6 million subs in like 18 months. It's basically unheard of in today's day and age, and he did it all through Shorts. There's also another big conversation going on in the creator economy right now that Shorts is cheapening the value of YouTube subscribers. YouTube subscribers used to be very, very high value. Like 6 million subs is huge, especially so quickly. But for that in particular creator, he didn't particularly make that much money out of those subscribers. He didn't have good retention on his long form videos. That's another thing. But if you just want to be able to say, I got 10 million views on YouTube Shorts, yes, just post it on Shorts, but maybe don't invest in a YouTube Shorts only show at this stage, would be my advice.
Fantastic. Just over here. Sorry to make you run back and forth.
No, that's what we're here for.
There you go. I know.
Run.
I'll give
Make
you
him
my
run.
mic.
He's amazing. Your energy and your enthusiasm and passion really come through. I'm just really in awe. It's amazing. And I really appreciate your comment about that teen girls are underserved. I totally agree with that. That being said, your audio podcast you were talking about for teen girls, is there a way we can find that? Or
Yes. It is called The Single Squad. So if you search The Single Squad on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, season 1 is now out. It is just my style. It's short form, so the episodes are only 5 minutes. And it's about a group of 3 teenage girls who agree to stay single to the end of high school, but surprise, they don't. There's boys and dating and drama, and it was sponsored by Moddy Body, which is period underwear. I don't know if you have Moddy Body in Canada. Obviously, teen girls, period underwear, makes sense. And I think it's 20 episodes. So yeah, The Single Squad. No worries. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
I'll pass it to you after, for sure. Okay, I know we're going back to TikTok as well because it's really important, and I know we've had over the last couple of days talking back and forth. And you did talk about it, and I think it's really important, especially for all the other creators and people that are following. One of the biggest things, especially going back and forth to YouTube, TikTok, and the other ways of following, is the hashtags as well. Because I know when you are having people follow you and wanting to get the amount of people, following and finding out how to get to you, how would you suggest that they, come on and keep on coming back? Because you were already saying, don't just do it once a day, once a week, you like 4 times a day or whatever. But how do you get them the hashtags?
So everyone at like TikTok Inc., and I'm glad there's no TikTok employees here, but stop recording. No, I'm kidding. A lot of people at TikTok will tell you, like, you need hashtags. If you don't put hashtags on your videos, it will be the death of your TikTok account. It's just like not true. I find mixed results. Sometimes hashtags have really helped me. Sometimes I've had videos go viral with 0 hashtags. It's just random. I think hashtags are really valuable if you are trying to get to a very specific community. So Formula One, for example, my For You page is now entirely Formula One content. All of the videos are hashtag F1, hashtag Carlos Sainz, my favorite driver. So it's like, I'm getting all that content from a niche community. But if your content is like rom-com or comedy, that's pretty broad actually, sketch comedy. So I don't know. It also can help and localize your content. Like I tell my content creators who are Australian, it's of very little value for them to go viral in the US because they want Australian brands to give them money. And Australian brands don't care about US views, they care about Australian views. So some just literally throwing up hashtag Australia on your content can help keep you in the Australian For You page. So it's a non-answer. Try everything. And if you really want to if your web series is about, I don't know, like dog grooming, and you want to get into like dog grooming For You page, then yeah, like hashtag dog grooming is probably a good idea. If it's a share house, roommate, situational comedy, anyone can enjoy that. Hashtag comedy, I don't know. A little less niche. Yeah, I think that's would be my thoughts.
just to jump in with hashtags, I think too, I would almost say sometimes the more specific you can be, because there's so many things. If you're, if I was to hashtag boots, hashtag leggings, hashtag, sweater, like I did in 2012, that, there's like 10, 20, 30 million of those. So I think getting really specific about that, and make sure that you're using hashtags that you actually go in and look at as well.
One time it has been useful for me is, and this was experiment, I hadn't done this before, is I did a content series with Tinder, not my scripted show. It was called Single Girl Season. There's a lot of single in my show titles. It was hashtag Single Girl Season, and we put that on every single post. So at the end for Tinder, I could go on and see that hashtag Single Girl Season had like 90 million views or whatever. And because it was a unique enough hashtag, I could see all the videos were ours. So if you want to make like a show hashtag, you can do that. But also the TikTok analytics will tell you your total views anyway. So I don't know.
Awesome. Last question.
So for someone who is trying to repurpose content from another platform to build that engagement or just brand awareness for the series, what is your recommendation on how they can go about doing that? Because one thing I know is that long-form content from YouTube doesn't always translate on a platform like TikTok if the video wasn't already created to be like a TikTok series. So what do you recommend we can do to repurpose from longer form to TikTok?
I think I'm just going to tell you what I assume other people have told you, which is like cut it vertical, obviously step one, and then cut it short. But like I was saying before, there's opportunities. One of the things I do at my job every day is we run the TikTok accounts for Warner Brothers and Universal Pictures Australia. And 100 or 99% of that work is repurposing like film trailers or scenes or things that are in movies that now need to be TikToks. So we go as far as even, we're not using the audio from those clips, we're just using the visuals, and we cut it to like a meme or trending sound. So can you think a little harder about how you're repurposing the content here? Like, don't just take 30 seconds of you saying your soundbite. Is there a moment of you, I don't know what your content is there a moment of you in the show where you have a funny face reaction, or there's a dog that's cute? I don't know, whatever footage you have, you need to think harder about how to make it for TikTok or for Reels, whatever platform. But if we're talking about TikTok, that could mean like taking your existing footage and putting it into a CapCut template, or putting some text on screen that turns a non-joke scene into a joke with TikTok context. I'm trying to think of like a relevant sound, but of course, right now, nothing is coming to me, but you know what I mean, like any kind of audio, TikTok audio trending meme or whatever.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate you being here. Please give it up for our two incredible panelists.